You're listening to the Work Cultured Podcast, where good companies keep good company. Today we have Paige Velasquez Budde. Did I say it right?
That's right.
On our podcast. She is the CEO of Zilker Media. It's an Austin media publications PR group. Yeah. Tell me about Zilker Media just in the elevator pitch kind of style.
Sure. So we are a public relations digital marketing agency that focuses on what we call building people-driven brands for thought leaders in the companies that they lead.
I love it. That's a great elevator pitch. And spoiler, I actually already knew that because I actually hired you guys at my last company, and we had a lot of fun doing this brand marketing and personal brand marketing. That was a fantastic experience and really meaningful. And you guys are doing really great work.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I know our team had a lot of fun with y'all as well, just looking at culture and integrating that into what we were doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you've been in that role for about 3 years?
Yeah. So I moved into the CEO role about 2019.
Okay. And how late into 2019? I'm curious.
So we did an internal transition starting in January. So internally, I had taken that role, and then we did the external announcement in July.
Great. Okay.
So that ramp up period and transition was really nice.
And you had some time in the seat before the old COVID hit too.
Right.
I'm sure that, as with all leaders,
Yeah.
pose some unique challenges.
Yeah, I'm telling you, what a first year to be in that role and kind of looking around and everybody's going, none of us have ever been through this before.
Right.
So I think it was one of the best things that could have happened to not only myself and my personal growth in that role, but also our company and our culture. And
Say more. Why? Why is that?
I think during that time, companies either held back or they got really bold. Mm-hmm. And we decided, and at the time we were probably 8 people full time at that point. So we were pretty small still.
Yeah.
And we decided just to, hey, let's get together and conquer this thing. There are 2 ways that we can come out of this and be proud of what we've done and do everything that we can absolutely do for our clients, for ourselves, for our team, or we can be scared and paralyzed in what we're doing and afraid to do anything. So we decided to come together, and it was such a great time for our culture too, because we'd been in person, we loved one another, and it was like, hey, let's call and check in on one another on a personal level and switch up some of the way we're doing things. And then we got really close with our clients during that time too, because everybody was being really vulnerable about what they were going through. And that was so important to us to, no matter what, provide the resources, provide the knowledge, provide the research that all of us needed to get through that. And we definitely placed some bets. There were some people where we said, hey, we're going to continue the same amount of work or more, and we're going to do it for less because we believe that this is going to support you. This is going to get you through what we need to get through. And, that was an exciting thing as a team we were pivoting every week.
Yeah.
When you think PR, the news cycle was changing on an hourly basis.
Right.
And we also were like, hey, for some of this, it's not the right time to pitch this. So let's be really mindful about what we can do in the meantime, where we can shift strategy. And for those that can be experts in this area, let's find the right opportunities where you can provide value for the general public. And then on the digital marketing side, the same thing. It was changing. We had these strategies. Typically you build out 6-month, 12-month campaigns.
Sure.
And those went out the door overnight.
Right.
So, we had to come together so tight knit with each other and with our clients and shift and be incredibly nimble and do it in a really organized fashion, which is hard to do.
Right.
And it was almost, exhausting. We worked our tails off.
Sure,
and it brought us all closer together.
Okay, so you already threw out the V word, my favorite word, vulnerability. Huge Brene Brown fan.
Yeah.
But she brought it to the mainstream, and now everybody's talking about it. Mm-hmm. Patrick Lencioni and Adam Grant, and everybody's on this vulnerability train.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you, and how did you cultivate that I mean, with a smaller group, maybe it's a little bit easier, but
Sure.
you're over 20 employees now, right?
We're
tripled
right. We're
in
right
size.
about that. We're right about 20
Okay.
at this point.
Okay. So yeah, how do you cultivate that and keep it as you're growing?
Yeah, I think it starts with the leadership, right? So, even me coming in to our executive team, one of those first meetings, and saying, "Hey guys, I don't know what all of this means," and just being really honest about that, and saying, here are some plans that we can put together. Here's what I've thought through so far. Let's start brainstorming. Let's start whiteboarding. We need to be clear with our teams that, hey, we don't have all the answers. We don't know what's going to happen, but we can plan, we can organize, and if we need to shift, we're looking at this daily, and we're going to do that. And our people are number one, and we're going to call and check in on you. We're going to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to provide value. And that was something that was so important for me to stand up in front of people and say, hey, I don't know the answers, but y'all are my number one priority. Our team is our number one priority. And so we're going to choose to come together to execute on this plan, and we might have to shift because this plan might not work.
Right. Yeah.
because
yeah,
it might change tomorrow.
And just being able to admit that, saying I don't have all the answers, and saying that in a true way of vulnerability is different than like crippling imposter syndrome, where because some people get into that leadership position and they just kind of like crumble because they're like, I don't know anything, and that's interesting. I'm curious. You've always struck me as someone really confident, and you're walking into that role, and yet you're still vulnerable, and you still admit when you don't have all the answers.
Right. And it, a lot of times when we say we don't have the answers, like in that situation, it's like, I don't have the answers, but we have a plan, and we've really thought about this, and it's on our minds every day. Y'all are our number one priority. We're not going to lay off anybody. Everybody's keeping their jobs. I mean, again, just keeping that security, but also being honest of where we're at.
Sure, absolutely.
It's a true balance.
Yeah. Adam Grant, I don't know if you know, I said that weird. Adam Grant is a really fantastic author. He has a podcast called Work Life. We talk about very similar things on each other's podcasts, and just culture and how to make work not suck. Right. But I can't remember if it was in his book or in a podcast, but he kind of brought forth this term, confident humility. And so, it's, you've got the ego maniac who always has all the answers. You have the imposter syndrome, but like they can't really take charge and lead. And so this is confident humility. Like, I'm moving forward with confidence, and yet I still don't have some of the answers. And I still make mistakes, which actually, we jumped right in to talking about culture because you said the V word. We had to get there. We had to go there. But we ask all of our podcast guests the same question, usually to start. But hey, we'll just kind of backtrack a little bit. But this is a great segue, talking about confident humility and making mistakes. What is a mistake that you've made in leadership that you'll never forget?
Oh my gosh, I have a lot of mistakes. And I think that's the important thing is bringing out those mistakes. I think when we were early on trying to grow our team, this is probably, I would say right at end of 2020, 2021, we'd really excelled in growth in 2020, which was awesome. And we were very fortunate to do that. So, thought, let's start hiring and let's grow the team. We didn't have a good hiring process. We didn't have a lot of good due diligence. We had just been kind of doing it, the bootstrap entrepreneurial way. And I do believe that there is a lot that comes from referrals. And so anybody we had hired up to that point, we kind of already knew. Sure. This is the first time we were going out and hiring new people.
Off the street.
Right.
Yeah, totally fresh.
And, I made a big hiring mistake. I did not do due diligence on an individual that I brought into the organization. I didn't have a process. I didn't have a good onboarding process to make sure that person was successful. Yeah. And we learned a lot from that. There were a few hires there that, the onboarding just wasn't great. We weren't setting people up for success. Yeah. And we wanted to make sure, and I wanted to make sure I owned that as a leader. Sure. And I said, hey, there's a lot more that's got to go into this with people that are coming in that are new, aren't as familiar with what we do. And we want to train our people to be excellent in every way. And, I didn't do that. I didn't set us up for success for that. I didn't set our leadership team up for success for that. And when we were looking at why these situations didn't work out, a lot of that was coming back to us not thinking it through, us not being strategic, us not having a plan for that. So it kind of makes you take a step back and say, these things are really important. We've got to start with this first step in order to be where we want to be 10 steps later, and I was just going here to there.
Right.
And no in between. And, that was just something that, our team was upset about because we were so tight and we really pride ourselves on retention and how long we've been together. And so those initial kind of in that time frame hires that we made that didn't work out, it was a lot of it was on us. And just being really honest about that and me saying, hey, this, I did not do a good job here.
Wow.
And I've got to learn from that. We've got to learn from that. And here's what we're going to do moving forward based on the feedback. And we did some really intense exit interviews that gave us a lot of insight of how we can better equip people in the initial stages.
What did you learn, you think, most from those exit interviews?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is just having a really clean process in terms of onboarding and training. And there's really two components of training that happen. And this is when we were hiring completely remote and we were all still working completely remote.
Right.
And we hadn't been a fully remote company ahead of that.
Yeah.
So we were learning a lot in this process. We were already struggling. How do we keep our culture alive with our current employees and then bringing new employees to the mix?
Were they still in-town people, but just working from their house? Okay.
Right. Because this was still in the throes of COVID where we weren't in office.
Sure.
And so we had just kind of figured out each other, and bringing new team members in, again, didn't do a great job. But we learned if we could plan out the first 90 days, almost hour by hour, very intentionally of what we want that to look like for a new team member, we're going to be set up for success. Also having a feedback loop. So now we have an internal NPS that they fill out that goes to our HR representative.
Very cool.
Every other week. And we ask them intentional questions to make sure we're getting the feedback we need to customize training because we pre-plan it out. So there might be times where we shift it based on their feedback. But there's kind of the hard skills side, then there's introducing them to the culture and the business, and then there's also relationship building with team members. Yeah. And so we thought about it in those three verticals, and we started coming up with a plan for each of those. And I got this recommendation from a really amazing entrepreneur in one of my business groups in WPO, which is Women's Presidents Organization. She told me that in their company, they do buddy weeks, and they're a completely remote company. So what they do is they pair a new team member up with an existing team member, and they go through every week during their onboarding until they've had a week with everybody in their department and then any external people that they're going to touch moving forward. And I even do buddy week as well.
Oh, nice.
And so it allows us you take 2 hours out of your week, 1 hour, you just kind of get to know them, get to know their role. They get to know a little bit more about you, the background, where you came from, that kind of thing. And then the other is some sort of outside social activity. So you can take them to lunch, you can do happy hour, you can do coffee.
And you're paying for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course. Yeah.
Of course. But it's just a good way to get people out of the day-to-day of getting to know one another, learn a little bit about the culture, but also how to work together.
And how the buddy system work when you were fully remote and still bringing on your people?
Yeah.
Or is that something that came later on?
No. So this was something that we started fully remote because we were struggling. There's no water cooler talk. There's no, I get to see you, hanging around the office, at the coffee station, anything like that. So that was even more important in the remote time than it is now that we're back in a hybrid environment. So what we did was we said, hey, take an hour, Zoom call, get to know one another. And then other than that, hop on for a coffee or a lunch. And they would just have lunch over Zoom, or coffee over Zoom, or drinks over Zoom. Some played fun games,
Sure.
some, each person came in with their own like way of introducing themselves, which was really cool.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Very cool. And now you're back in the office, but hybrid,
Right.
it sounds like. Okay.
Right. So we started the company hybrid, actually. So the good news is we had some systems in place when COVID happened. And the reason why we wanted to intentionally start the company hybrid and keep the company hybrid is because we believe people thrive in certain environments. We wanted the collaboration because that is really important in terms of creative campaigns and things that we do in the marketing realm. But we also wanted an opportunity for people that work solo or in
the
a
heads
closed
down
environment.
people.
There's some people that thrive in coffee shops. There's some people that do thrive in the office. And so the way we started the company was saying, hey, everybody is required to come in 2 days a week. One is a department day, one is a full team day.
Okay.
The other 3 days, you work where you are most
Nice.
productive.
Are some people still coming in, like the more social folks?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're still popping in. Yeah, 5 days a week. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We have team members that come in every day and have their specific office they like to sit in. We have certain team members that say, okay, I'm going to have 2 office days, and the rest of the days, I'm going to book out my calls on Mondays. I'm going to do my in-person meetings on Wednesdays. And then I'm going to do coffee shop and meet up with a few of the girls in my neighborhood that work in my department. So that's the fun thing is like our team can meet up in different areas in Austin too.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
a
and your
lot
office is down the street from like 4 different distilleries and breweries. It's not like it's the worst place to go.
Right. It's a cool part of Austin that, the team can get out to and they can escape more in the hill country. Like we have a front porch, we have a back porch, and it's just beautiful hill country views.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely a different, scenery out there than it is in town. And, some of the coffee shops will be, coffee, and then they'll serve lunch, and then there'll be, evening drinks. And so that's fun for them to gather around as well.
Yeah. I love that. What would you say is the biggest factor for you creating and maintaining and permeating good, strong culture?
Yeah. The biggest factor is, I think, really listening to your people and keeping culture at the forefront, as especially in the CEO role, that being your top priority.
Yeah.
Culture changes, especially with, the people that you bring on, the next chapter in terms of the vision of your company, how we want that to look and feel. But at the end of the day, the expectation and the accountability is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And so empowering everybody to hold one another accountable is important to continually message into your team. And so one thing that we do is we take our core values incredibly seriously. Like we kind of laugh about how serious we take them sometimes, especially when we're going through interview process, and we get to talk about this a lot. Is it's not just something that we say. It's not just something that's on our wall. We're talking about it weekly as a team. We're talking about it monthly, one-on-one with direct reports. We're talking about it annually. Like that is how our team is measured in terms of performance, is how well they're living up to core values.
I love that. Yeah, I did something very similar at my last company where, every time there was a, employee review, good or bad, praise was always tied to a core value. Right. Oh, you demonstrated this, et cetera. Reprimanding or criticism or whatever the nice words for that are, were also tied to a core value. Yes. When you did this, it did not exhibit XYZ.
Right.
And in every meeting, or at least company-wide meeting, they say your people have to hear something 7 times before they hear it the first time, and these people zone out. So you say those core values over and over and over again, and get them to be ingrained.
I'll tell you one thing that we have found extremely valuable is making it a two-way street between leadership, direct report, and other team members. And so what I mean by that is in one-on-one conversations, we're not just talking to them about how they have displayed or lived up to or not lived up to core values. we are asking for the same conversation in return.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
They
they're
can call you
actually,
out.
yeah. And that's what we want.
Mm-hmm.
And we say, hey, if there's ever a time that we're calling each other out, that means we are living up to our core values. We are holding each other accountable. That is the expectation for everybody in this room, on this team. And so it's really special when you start to get that feedback as well. And there's a strong feedback loop, and it's important to have that feedback loop because you want to make sure what you're messaging and how you're delivering it and what your actions are, as a leader, are aligning with that.
Yeah, it takes some courage in the leadership seat to enable that. I'll never forget. It was before COVID, so things were normal, so to speak. And
what is normal?
Yeah, no. So at the time, I'm the president of this company. We're over 2,000 employees, and there's just some random guy in Pennsylvania, out of our Philadelphia office, who, 2,000 people, you can't know everybody, right? And so I get an email from somebody, and I don't recognize the name. So, go in the HR system, look him up. But his email, he was just like, hey, the message you said last week didn't feel like it really, you say people matter much. That was our number one core value. It sure didn't feel like it. I was like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
I just got called out. But, I think by responding to that, and I'm sure that you feel this as well, by responding to that with grace and recognizing it, acknowledging you're right. And yes, you're welcome to call me out. Right. I think that goes a really long way.
Right. No, I think those are some of the most valuable conversations with team members, and it really builds a strong trust and respect amongst one another.
Yeah.
And, I always get weary if somebody never says anything because nobody's perfect, right?
Sure.
And so it's good to have those healthy, challenging conversations amongst a team. And it's your job as a leader to facilitate an environment like that. And for someone to raise their hand if they ever feel like it's not that for some reason at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. You were actually just on a podcast, right?
I was.
I just saw this 2 days ago, I think.
Oh, okay. It might have been the one that just went live, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And you were talking about the marketing, the PR, but you ended up going into one of your core values, good vibes, on that episode. Yeah. But now you have to pick a different one. So you've already been on a podcast. You've already talked about good vibes. What's another core value that really just means a lot to you and you see it playing out day to day?
Sure. One of my favorites to talk to our team members about is bold integrity.
Okay.
And this is one that I truly see as a competitive advantage for our team. The expectation coming into the team is we're all human and there are mistakes that are going to be made. Whether it's something that was sent out and shouldn't have been sent out, or there's a misspelling somewhere, or whatever it might be, it's going to happen at some point, right? But it depends on what happens after we make a mistake that determines who we are and if we're living up to our core value. And so whether that means having to call a team member and say, hey, I apologize. I let you down. Here's what happened. Here's my solution for fixing this. Or it's immediately calling a client and saying, hey, we made a mistake. We're already on the path to fixing it. Here's how we're doing it. That provides so much more respect to one another as team members, also to our clients, than if we were trying to hide it or if,
sweep it under the rug.
Right. And that's not, we want to make sure that we understand mistakes are going to happen. We're going to put processes into place to make sure that they don't happen moving forward. But if we're not learning from it, if we're not, providing solutions immediately for that, that's something that's going to be, it's not worth us not having that bold integrity.
Yeah. I like, integrity is one of the ones that Brene makes fun of when she's talking about core values, right? Because she's like the eagle poster, integrity. And, integrity means something different to everyone.
Sure.
But if you define it, then it actually makes sense. So she says, take your values from BS to behaviors.
Right.
And it sounds like you guys have done that. You're creating, but you also throw the word bold in front of it.
Yeah.
So tell me why that's significant.
It's important because we're not just gonna kind of let people know we made a mistake. It's like, hey guys, we messed up.
Yeah.
Here's what we learned from it. And that's something that we've recently taken us a step further, and we've started internal reviews when we've had mistakes happen, where it's kind of like where somebody comes up and they said, hey, this happened, I made a mistake. I either let a team member down or made a mistake with the client. Here's what I learned from that. Here's stuff that you can do to prevent that happening to yourself. And so again, it's more of a healthy way of looking at it and talking about it. And, I think it's important for us not only to learn ourselves, but to help other team members learn just as much.
Yeah. And it that almost feels like a postmortem.
Yes.
Like if you lose a client, you have this postmortem to figure out what happened, how do we prevent it?
That's kind
and
of
just
the
kind
idea.
of any mistake that you dig in. And with that too, there's a safety, the psychological safety for your employees to admit their mistakes.
Right.
In fact, the accountability is that you're expected to make mistakes, essentially.
Right.
Because you're expected to still be human.
Right. And we're expected to try new things.
Yeah.
Too.
I love that as well.
Yeah. We had a product that we launched in COVID, and it didn't perform like we thought it would. And so it was, just a great conversation of our team coming to the table and say, hey, we failed. This didn't work.
Yeah.
What can we learn from it? What can we apply to make this better? And now we have a phenomenal product that we just launched a couple of months ago, and it's already running.
Nice.
And so it was exciting to see, hey, that whole process failed, but look at what we have now because of that, and because we were honest with ourselves and had a conversation about it.
Yeah.
One thing that we do, kind of talking about core values and talking about this core value in particular, is we not only write them out, but we write descriptions underneath each of them.
Yeah.
And what we have found as a leadership team are those descriptions change over time in terms of how we want that core value lived out in that stage of the business.
I love that. Yeah. Don't set it and forget it.
Right.
Like, let's revisit this and make sure it's resonating with who we are, the essence of who we are.
Right. So we never change our core value, but we change the description or the way we want it lived out, which is really neat. And that has been fun to watch over the years. We had a big change that happened in 2020, and it really gave us kind of a guiding light of what it would look like 2020 and beyond. And it was, thankfully the right time to have that change happen. I
love that. This bold integrity, I'm glad that you brought that up, because it seems like it's served you quite well. This product you launched that didn't work out well, there's a pretty good chance that if bold integrity wasn't part of your core values, that some people would have just kind of started digging their heels in, and have you heard of escalation of commitment? Right. Yeah. So like to a failing cause, that's the full thing, right? So you just keep digging your heels and you keep, let's throw some more resources, money, and people at it. But it just fails. But hey, like, we have this freedom to admit mistakes, call a failure, and then learn and move on. And now you've got this new product that's successful.
Right. Right. And I'm finding too, the faster we move with that, the faster we admit failure, the faster we say, hey, this part didn't work out, but we might have something over here, and we talk about it.
Yeah.
The more succinctly, the faster we're able to move as a team to help achieve some of those goals. And so I think that's where you continue to mature as a business, is feeding into the team. Let's go and fail fast, but at least we're going and giving 100%. Yeah. We're learning and we're moving and we're shifting, and especially as we work in a landscape that shifts so quickly, you've got to have that mentality, and you've got to have that drive to stay ahead.
Yeah. I'm really curious, and maybe I can get you to have the rest of your leadership team take the same assessment that you took, right? So you did the predictive index assessment. You came back a Maverick. I'm not shocked at all. I'm a Maverick as well.
Oh, cool.
And so is Daniel, who's not here because he's got COVID.
Oh,
Ew.
No.
It just keeps coming back. I feel like everyone's just ignoring it these days, but like everybody's still getting it.
Is it like which version? Are we on? I hate it though. It's.
Yeah, it's annoying. But yeah, so some of the big things that I noticed, not just in the nickname Maverick, but like your results particularly, that I think make you really uniquely positioned to lead Zilker Media. You've been talking about speed. It's been, speed to failure, right? that your profile, your hard wiring is this like independent, driving, restless, intense, and like the details don't really matter as much. Like you want to get it right, but like your foot's on the gas and the brake pedal is somewhere. Does that sound about right?
So yes and no. Okay. So, I also see myself as really analytical too, but I think I've really worked to make sure that that's not getting in the way. It's really funny. It's like you have this gas and then the brake, gas and brake. And, sometimes we get feedback from leadership team of, hey, we're trying to do way too much right now. Let's focus in. And so I have really worked hard to narrow in the focus, steer the ship, north and make sure, because there's so many shiny things you can be doing. And a lot of times it's like, oh, let's do this, or oh, let's do this idea and let's launch this product. And all of that's exciting. And some of those things are the right move. But I think it's the right thing to surround yourself with people who are kind of like a mirror back to you.
Yeah, and balance you out. Yeah.
Right. And
otherwise it's just change for the sake of change.
Right. and that's not, healthy either.
Right.
And so it's looking at how can we balance this, and how can I be mindful of that to ensure that we're really building something strategically.
Yeah.
Because I think you can scale and do it in a way that can be detrimental to an organization. And I think you can scale and do it strategically and find the right pace to really build what you want.
Yeah. Pace. You are very fast paced. Is that accurate? I mean, not like reckless. Sure. But like driving, like not a lot of patience.
Sometimes I want to go A to C, and then if I don't realize B's that, I talked about the hiring thing earlier. Totally. Like we gotta step back, we gotta build a process, we gotta set expectations with the team, and then we've gotta train and we've gotta bring that to life. And I'm learning a lot of patience and in making sure that I'm repeating. And I learn a lot of times, if something doesn't happen or if something doesn't go the way we want, it was my fault. I didn't communicate that in the right way. I wasn't very clear on expectations and how we get there and what that looks like. And so that's when I think it's so valuable to have a leadership team that is incredibly strong to surround yourself with. And really sit down, and sit down and strategically plan. And each person's bringing a different strength to the table. I think there's a way to really focus in on making sure that we're doing it the right way, because there's a longer term goal in play on what we want to build here. Yeah.
How competitive do you consider yourself?
Very competitive. If you ask my husband, it's like we're in competition all the time.
Oh, wow. Fun times. Okay. And how do you feel that as a strength as you're, leading the company, as you're building into this culture? Yeah. Because you mentioned earlier that like you consider your culture a competitive edge.
Yeah. So I think it's really good to be competitive with yourself. And that's the way to really look at it is, hey, we did this. That's great. Now, how can we do it even better? Or how can we do it bigger? Or how can we do it where it's more valuable and meaningful? And so that's something that, our team loves to ask. It's, and maybe gets annoyed with me asking all the time. It's like, this is awesome. We have a huge win. Now let's how do we duplicate it and do it even better? And so
maybe pause to celebrate the win. And then how can we go bigger?
Exactly. And that's the fun part. And that's where it's fun to build that into a culture. Our PR team, and this is totally our chief publicity officer that put this into play, but it's so much fun. They do what's called a pitch party. Okay. So it's internally, they're pitching media. Every time they get a request, they ding the bell. And, nice. And they're playing music, and they're just like, they're just crushing it. And it's so much fun, and they're looking forward to it. They're asking when the next party is, and it's like a challenge, and it's, it's that healthy competitiveness with one another as a team.
Not trying to beat anyone else. Just trying to push each other and yourself harder.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the kind of competitiveness that we want to foster.
Love that.
And that's how I think about it with myself and with our company. because I think there's an unhealthy level of looking at everybody else and you can get lost doing that versus like really looking at what you're trying to build and how you can get better.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Gosh, we talked about a lot of really fun things around culture and the way you've built this business and the growth that you've experienced in the role for the last 3 years. So thank you so much for all this valuable info and fodder for conversation. Before we kind of move on, what do you want to pitch? What do you want to plug here on the podcast?
Like as a call to action, or
I mean, do you want your listeners to be like, hey, you better call Zilker Media because you need a personal brand and we're your people? Or do you have a podcast or like, you're also a musician. Are you playing around town anymore? You can tell people.
No, I think the biggest thing that we want to challenge people with is to think about their marketing differently. So there's so much going on in the landscape where we're starting to turn away from generic mass media, right? One, increasingly projecting bias on what we're consuming, but two, we're realizing it's an hour of our time watching a morning show or listening to a normal news segment, and we're only getting about 10 minutes of really what we came there for.
Interesting.
And so people are starting to turn away from that now to what we call micromedia, which are individuals that we perceive as knowledgeable. They teach us, they're educating, they're entertaining, and they're not selling.
Right.
And so that's when we start to listen to podcasts. That's when we start to read trade publications, newsletters, and we're spending now 30 to 45 minutes of our time on exactly what we want to consume.
Interesting.
And so just as you're thinking about marketing, the big thing that we want to shift is the mindset around that they're looking to interact with people.
Yeah.
And so the way that you build not only your corporate brand, but also your personal brand and how that aligns with the company brand that you're trying to build, you want to look at how you can position your people at the forefront. If you think about it, what is your most unique asset as a company? It's going to be your people.
Always, yeah.
And so why not use that at the forefront of your marketing? And that's exactly kind of our philosophy is how do we build a brand around people to attract customers, to make a bigger impact, to attract the right talent, to retain the right talent. It's so important in our ecosystem, but it's so important in the environment that we live in now.
Agreed.
So it's kind of shifting that mindset, and that's exactly what we do. We actually have a quiz on our website. So if you go to zilkermedia.com, it's that first button that you click, and it's called the Brand Power Score. And you can take it from the lens of what you are doing online as an individual, but also what your company's doing online to see how you measure up.
If any of it has to do with social media, I'm failing miserably.
There's a little bit about social media in there.
I call it on the iPhone, it's a cloud of shame when you're in the App Store. If you've already downloaded an app, but you don't have it, it has a little cloud with a down arrow. I was very proud that TikTok never had the cloud of shame for me, but I'm doing this podcast now and I'm like, I have to get TikTok. So now I have the app on my phone. It's doing nothing. Which I know doesn't help. Having an app doesn't help social media.
Have you logged into TikTok?
I have logged in.
Did you stay there for an hour?
No, I literally didn't look at anything.
If you did, you would stay there for at least an hour.
Okay. All right. Well, when I have some spare time, I will check that out. Wise words from Paige Velasquez Budde.
Yes.
Got it right. Excellent. All right. Well, here's how we're going to end. We're going to do a little quick fire. It's a little this or that. All right. I'm just going to say words. You got to pick which one you want right out of the gate. Here we go. Okay. Pancakes or waffles?
Pancakes.
Google or Microsoft?
Ooh, Google.
Board games or card games?
Card games.
Toilet paper goes under or over?
Over.
Of course
Always
it does.
Always over.
Yes.
Who puts it under?
Sick freaks. Night owl or morning person?
Morning.
Morning person. Excellent. Well, go ahead.
I know. Very funny. Musician life needed to be night owl, but better here, morning life.
Yeah. Not that my listeners or viewers care, but I'm going to be up till 2 a.m. Playing a gig tonight. I
know how that goes.
Barf. Yeah. I'm a morning person too.
Yeah.
Well, hey, that was a fun way to end.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
This was been a blast. Zilker Media is excellent. Zilkermedia.com. Take the quiz. Go look up Paige. Follow her on LinkedIn. Lots of great content you guys are putting out. I mean, you have to. You're a marketing company. But so keep doing it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Lovely conversation. Love your core values. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on, Jason.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.